Power shifted from the east into the west between the years of 1450 and 1720. But everybody knows that. What we want to explain is how.
What we want to explain is how Europe pulled itself out of the Dark Ages by its bootstraps and turned into one of the most powerful regions in the world. The question is how, though?
It was the rapid rate of innovation made in the West, both social and scientific, that allowed them to gather power from the East by bypassing the rest of the world's advancements.
These innovations and changes are shown through four major ways. The first major event was the Reformation, when the Catholic Church split and a Protestant church was created. The second being the Enlightenment era, the time when new thoughts and ideas exploded. The third being the scientific revolution, when the people and scientists all began to understand the world. And the final event is the age of exploration, when people started to finally see what the world really was.
But all of these factors on their own would not have made much of a difference. But together, they made the West what it was.
There once was a man named Martin Luther. Luther had some big moral issue with the Catholic Church and their use of the widely successful and assuring indulgences, which brought peace of mind to many people.
Martin Luther saw the indulgences as the Catholic Church taking people's attention away from the acts of Jesus and drawing attention to traditions and ceremonies. Luther believed that the Church had become corrupt and was acting out of greed. Because of this, he nailed his 95 theses to the door of the local Catholic Church. The Church did not respond positively, and Luther was excommunicated from the Church. He continued to push for these ideas and eventually started a new sect of Christianity, Protestantism.
After we kicked Luther out, he went out and started stirring up trouble all over the place. We lost Britain and most of Germany. Spain and France remained with us in our pursuit for heaven, but there was war everywhere. Protestants and Catholics fighting for power in every kingdom, our counter-reformation and their heresy. Europe was a dark place.
In each kingdom, the ruler chose the religion. In the transition between rulers, a new religion was often pushed upon the people. Religious intolerance, already a norm, would intensify. Courts and special police were established to punish all that refused to convert. Expulsion, imprisonment, torture, the death penalty, mass executions, and massacres were tools of religious repression applied both by Catholics and Protestants. But these tragedies only made the people stronger, and their innovations more necessary.
The Reformation had effects that reached out of religion. In England alone, there were drastic changes. After dismantling the systems of monasteries, the kingdom gained vast amounts of wealth. Then, following years of fighting, a Protestant England survived, with citizens full of national pride and loyalty. In the rest of Europe, the effects were widespread. Wherever the Catholic Church lost power, free thinking was expressed. Universities became a less rare phenomenon and were able to teach much more accurately and efficiently. It wasn't just peace that came out of the Reformation, however. Western Europe was full of wars and conflicts for hundreds of years. Because of this, the different kingdoms developed standing armies and military technology that hadn't been seen before. Both the intellectual and military advancements made because of the Reformation helped push the West past civilizations both close and far.
Stupid Martin Luther, disrespecting the church, encouraging people to think for themselves? How ridiculous! When the Reformation happened, it paved the way for a new age of thinking. An age with the Catholic Church no longer restricting how people thought, allowing for a much larger spread of unrestricted exploration of different ideologies.
Thomas Hobbes once wrote a book called The Leviathan. This book really helped out the idea of the government helping the people. John Locke greatly contributed to this belief, saying that the government should form a social contract with the people to protect their natural rights to life, liberty, and property. And if the government begins to restrict the people's natural rights, then it is the people's right to rise up against them and instate a new government. Rise up, brother! Rise up against the tyranny!
As more social groups emerged, people in France were encouraged to engage in intellectual conversation with their peers, discussing the political and philosophical status of the country.
Wow, what wonderful weather we're having today. Huh, I wonder why that apple just fell down.
People like this were called philosophers. Many of these philosophers were deists, They disdain organized religion and the chain of being. This relates back to hierarchy ethics, a term that captures essential material about the dominant forms of thinking that emerged in the West during the Enlightenment.
As for Italy, a movement emerged called Neapolitanism, in which a general revival of interest in classical antiquity came from. This movement was generally strong in Florence, under the Medici family.
The new ideas that developed during the Enlightenment era were crucial to the advancement of the West.
The scientific revolution is the known emergence of modern science when developments in mathematics, physics, anatomy, astronomy, biology, medicine, and chemistry transform views of life and nature. According to traditional accounts, the scientific revolution began in Europe towards the end of the Renaissance era and continued through the late 18th century. This influenced the intellectual and social movement that we know today as the Enlightenment. The concept found at this time was heliocentrism, which was the placement of the Earth as the center of the universe. Another aspect of the scientific revolution was the exclusion of the Aristotelian theory that matter was continuous and made up of the elements of the Earth, water, air, and fire. Because its classic rival, atomism, was more of a mechanical philosophy.
Nicholas Copernicus developed the heliocentric model of the universe. This radical theory claimed that the sun is the center of the universe and that the Earth revolves around it. Galileo continues Copernicus's work by observing the skies with a homemade telescope. Although he was able to prove Copernicus correct, his work was disapproved by the Church and he was forced to recant or face execution. Isaac Newton built upon the earlier work of both Copernicus and Galileo and used mathematics to describe gravity as the force that keeps planets revolving around the sun. He also explained that this same force is what causes objects to fall to Earth.
The Age of Exploration officially began in about the early 15th century and essentially lasted until around the 17th century. It was a time when Europeans began exploring the world by sea in search of, new goods, trading partners, and discovering new trade routes along the way. The explorers often lacked the necessary funding for, shipment supplies and such. Thus, as a result, many would turn to their respective governments which had their own desires for the explorations. Many nations were looking for things such as silver and gold. But one of the major reasons for exploration was the desire to find new route for spice and silk trades. Although the age, of exploration officially ended in the 17th century, it is pertinently important to note, however, that the exploration did not cease entirely at this time. Eastern Australia was not discovered until 1770, and the Arctic and Antarctic areas were not heavily explored until the 19th century. Much of Africa also, which was unexplored until the 19th and even early 20th centuries. As far as contributions to geography, by traveling to different regions around the world, explorers were naturally able to learn more about areas such as Africa and America, and its natural inhabitants, the Native Americans and such. Methods of navigation and mapping also improved as a result of the travels. The Age of Exploration served as a sort of stepping stone for geographic knowledge known today. It allowed more people to see and study various areas around the world, which increased geographic studies, giving us the basis for much of the knowledge we have today.
Seeing how the Reformation spurred free thinking and military innovations. The Enlightenment era brought forth a thought process that led people to more individualistic and self-centered ideas, something that made them care more about their powers of civilization. The scientific revolution gave the West a technological edge over its competition, and the Age of Exploration meant that the West could expand, both territorially and powerfully. The common factor here is that in each event, it leads the West into making innovations of some kind. Together, this pushed the West forward into becoming the most powerful region in the world.
Wanna have an apple? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird.
Let's go! My home! My home! My home! Dear God, Obama.
Why, hello there. I didn't hear you come in.
Such a culture, man.